Welcome to this episode of the Magellan Network Show. This is episode number 362. Hope you guys are off to a great start this summer of 2026. And in this episode, something we've not covered very much, something kind of new. I want to talk about next gen or G2 or Generation 2 financial advisors. And number one, why that's so important in our industry, but also from two different perspectives. If you're one of these newer G2 advisors, I want to give you a framework, what you need to be looking for when you're looking at firms to come to go join, and really more than just kind of compensation, but how are they going to develop you? We're going to talk about that in a moment. And then from the firm owner perspective, what do you need to do not just to attract Generation Twos, but also how to retain them, how to develop them, how to make them part of your long-term business slash succession plan. Uh, Before we get into all that, though, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Coach Joe Lukacs, and for 32 years, and plus, I've done nothing but coach financial advisors, over 2,500 practices, bringing in over $50 billion of new money, $500 million of new profit, and I'm passionate about what I do, and I plan to do it for a very, very, very long time. So, the reason why I chose this subject is so this year when I started to kind of like, what am I going to do? I really wanted to take a deep dive into what is our industry doing for either second career or young advisors coming out of college to develop them. Because I can remember the days of the early 1990s where big firms would go and recruit big training classes, and then about 90% of them would fail, right? Because you couldn't cold call, you couldn't sell, you couldn't pitch, you couldn't handle the rejection. The bottom line, you were out. Okay, so I was just curious. Well, 30 some odd years later, how much of that has changed? And there's been a slight improvement, but I'm gonna give you some scary, stark numbers. And by the way, these are not my numbers. These are from different consulting companies, Cerulean Associates, and various other ones. These are all cited in my new white paper about G2 development and building your bench. And you can get that white paper at Coach Joe, coachjoe.guru, Guru, under our G2 program. So let's get into some stark numbers. Number one, failure rate is 72% over 5 years. So better than 90, but still super expensive. Now, what does the data show? That if an advisor that you hire fails out in that 5-year window, and again, it's going to obviously year one less, year three, four, five more expensive, but typically you're going to be looking at anywhere from a $600,000 to a $1 million hole in your P&L, not just hard cost to hire the advisor, but overhead, training, focus, time, your time, training, and then mentoring, and then they kind of fail out. All these things. So we got to be really, really clear about that. The second piece of this, again, this is a strategic puzzle, is that most most people, heirs, when they inherit mom and dad's money, about 90% of them, 9 out of 10, do not work with mom and dad's advisor. Now, it doesn't mean they wouldn't be open to a relationship with another advisor in the same firm, but they're not going to work with mom and dad's advisor because it was mom and dad's advisor. So we have so if we're in business, we have a big strategic problem, a very scary strategic problem that we need to understand. How big of a problem is it? You ask. Over the next decade, a third of our colleagues are going to retire. A third of advisors are going to disappear. And that's a scary number because we're not going to replace them one for one. Now, will technology and artificial intelligence and some of these other things come into play to augment the advisor of the future? Yes, the G2s, absolutely, we're seeing it now. But we're still going to have a lot of brain drain. And what does that mean for you as a firm owner? A massive amount of competition for human talent. And many of you are already seeing it. And it's not just about comp. Let me be very clear. There's always somebody that's gonna pay more for your advisor than you're willing to comp them. True. But it can't be just about compensation, it's gotta be about development. So we're gonna get to that a little bit in our conversation today. So I also want you to think about 2 other numbers. $124 trillion is gonna change hands over the next 10, 15 years, according to studies. We talk about the great wealth transference, well, that's what it looks like. And I also want you to remember this. For every young advisor that washes out, you lose capabilities, and you also lose a future buyer of your firm if you're focused on succession planning, continuity planning for yourself. So here's the bottom line. If you don't develop your G2s, that means you're going to lose your G2s. That means you're going to have no bench, and that means you're not going to have any exit strategy whatsoever other than maybe a sale. But again, if you think about valuations, firms are way more valuable when the staff comes with them. There's going to be retention of the talent, right? But if it's just you and then you're gonna beg out, it's gonna cost you from that perspective, okay? So I just wanna lay that all out, and by the way, I see this every day in the business. I see it every day in my work, and this is something that we need to do. So again, now that we set the stage, let's talk about, kind of what needs to be done here. And I'm going to talk about development. So this is going to really be about how to develop our G2s. And again, if you're a G2 advisor, this is one of the filters that you want to look at evaluating your current firm potentially or any other future firm. All right. It's not just about comp. It's about how they're going to make you the best. And then if you're a firm leader, hey, you got to be really really aware of this, right, going forward. So I'm going to give you 5 pillars, the 5 pillars of what we call the advisor development. This is a fundamental. Now the question is, where do we get this from? So quick story. About 4 years ago now. Actually, it's been longer than that. Probably for like the last decade, quite frankly. Many of my personal clients have been over the last 10 years bringing their adult children into their businesses. And, having a family business is great. And it could also be one of the worst things you ever do, right? Depending on the situation. And I've seen both. So I've been asked by many of my clients is, hey, can you put together like a new advisor training program, new advisor coaching program? And, quite frankly, for about 3, 4 years, I didn't want to do it. And the last thing I need is another project, quite frankly. But I remember we were all sitting. I think we were in Del Mar, California, actually, and we're just kicking it around one evening, I kind of got cornered a little bit, and they said, "Look, you got to really do this for us because we're trying to train our kids on ourselves, and it's mom and dad, right? And it's different." So, fast forward, we put a program together. We launched it about 3 years ago, and it's just been a wild success. It's been only available to my personal clients, quite frankly. And so this is where a lot of this information, the framework I'm going to give you now really comes from. It's not some hypothetical. This is what we actually teach, coach, mentor. Okay. So I'm going to give you the four. I'm going to give you the 5 foundations first, and then I'm going to give you maybe some tactical pieces too, right? From that perspective. And by the way, these are in no particular order. This is not like, well, number one is number one, and stuff like that. So let's talk about number one, which is when you're G2, you've got to talk to them about their vision, their mindset, and basically kind of their foundation in terms of what they expect. Right now, here's what's interesting. Most advisors do not like it during the interview process when a young advisor starts talking about partner and partner tracks and what's it going to take to make partner. Can we make partner here? And I love it. Why? That means they're thinking like an owner. They want to be an owner. They want to have a stake in the game. They want to be a stakeholder, right? I would much rather have that conversation than somebody says, well, hey, what would my hours be? How much personal time off do I get? When can I leave? What's the benefits package? How much you're going to pay me? Like it's all about them and their comp, right? So from an owner perspective, right? I mean, it may be a safer conversation when they're talking about that, but what you really, really want is somebody thinking like an owner. So that's going to be attractive to me, right? And if you're a younger advisor and you're going to be ready to go into interviews and stuff like that, I would tell you, man, like don't get caught up in the what am I going to get? All right, it's going to turn a lot of people off. What you really, really want to focus on, quite frankly, is how you're going to add value, what the track is, stuff like that. So, from an owner perspective, we want really three elements. And this is something where you may have to sit down with your, after you hire them, or even maybe before you hire them, and say, look, let's figure out what you want to, let's figure out, let's scratch out, right? And we know it's not going to be super detailed, but let's scratch out a 10-year, 3-year, and 1-year plan. Like, hey, where do you want to be in a decade? Where do you want to be in 3 years? And when you want to be in a year. Now, why do we use that framing and that timeline, those timelines? It fits really well into EOS, and we like doing EOS things here. So, and many advisory firms practice EOS, and if you're not, you really should. So we like to put it inside that framework, right? And so that's going to be, I want to know what that's about, and I want them to think like an owner. I want them to be a stakeholder. Remember, there's three types, and again, advisor owner here. There's three types of people that show up in our world: people that want a job, people that want a career, and people that are stakeholders. I will submit to you, you only want to hire stakeholders if possible. Okay. And if you're on the other side of the fence, you want to act and get the mindset of a stakeholder. If you got in this game to just have a job, that's fine. You'll get paid well. You'll do some stuff. You're going to miss out on a lot of opportunity. You're going to wish you didn't do that. So just don't. Right. What else are we going to do? We're gonna we're gonna absolutely make sure that they understand. We talk about the foundation, that basically, hey, this is a personal development, success or failure, rejection game. All right, it is not life or death, but and it's not a personal. If somebody says no to you, it's not a personal failure. See, we got to remember this, and I'm going to speak maybe hopefully not out of turn, but I'm going to give you my belief. And by the way, my adult children would all fall in this category, late 20s, early 30s, right? Um, I call them, and respectfully, I call them the marshmallow generation. Why? Because they're soft. They got participation trophies. When I grew up, many of you watch or listen to me, like we grew up, you won or you didn't. You didn't get a trophy for just playing. You got trophies for winning, right? And for some of you, in fact, maybe more, when you got in this game, it was eat or be eaten, kill or be killed, right? It's not the way it is anymore, and that's okay. Point I'm making is this: mental toughness and resiliency needs to be taught, needs to be coached, needs to be trained, right? And then the other thing we're going to do with our younger advisor, and again, if you're a young advisor, I need you to think in terms of 30 and 40-year careers, 30 and 40-year partnerships, 30, 40-year of playing the game, right? So that way you take a little bit of pressure off. Okay, that's number one. Number two, um, daily execution. So this is where literally will the rubber meets the road. I can't tell you how many times I've talked to a young advisor, and they'll reach out to me on LinkedIn, and I have an open door policy. Any advisor comes 30 minutes of my time, barring my schedule, of course. No questions asked. And over the last couple of years, I can't tell you how many young advisors, reach out to me, and just bemoaning a little bit where they're at, what they're doing, what's not happening. And I always ask them a question. I say, well, in any given day, how do you know if you had a good day or not? Like, how do you know if you won? How do you know you put a W on the board? So years ago, it was simple. How many dials did we do? How many contacts did we do? How many tickets did we drop? It was the game was when the market was open, that's when the game began. And when the market closed at 4 o'clock Eastern, that's when the game ended. And you knew at 4:15 what kind of day you had every day, right? No longer the case today. So it's not about so if you're in the leadership chair, it's not about keeping your G2s busy. Okay. It's about getting them focused, right? And what they need to be focused on. They need to be focused on driving conversations, right? And if they're in training, then that's going to be more about shadowing you, learning reps. But here's the gig: they need to be developing. Like every day, they need to be learning something. Every day, they need to be repping something out to master something. Okay. Critically important. So if you think about it, it's going to come down to daily execution and business development. Now, that business development does not need that they need to be cold calling. They're in a position they can be calling your lower tier clients, checking in, building relationships, working their warm market. Totally fine with that, right? So on and so forth. But here's the thing: what I'm getting to is This is not about busy work. Okay, that's basically pillar number 2. Pillar number 3, you've got to teach your young advisor, and you, the young advisor, need to learn how to start your day. So in Magellan, we have a 8-step protocol that we use. I'm not going to get into it here. You can go find it. Just Google it. You can go to my YouTube channel, Morning Rituals. You'll find it there. Bottom line is this: if you own the first hour of the day, you'll own the day. Here's the thing: most young advisors want to, in most cases, they feel that they're not as knowledgeable, so they'll overlean or overweight news, right? Hey, I need to know what's going on. So they'll get in there, they'll get into the news feeds and stuff like that. And that's not how we want to be excellent. I'm not saying knowledge is not important. I'm not saying that being caught up on current affairs is not important, but it doesn't have to happen in the first 60 minutes. For many decades, I've talked about morning rituals. It's all the rage now, right? The 5 a.m. club and the morning miracle and stuff that we were doing. I was doing this stuff 30 to 35 years ago. Okay. Bottom line is this: you control the first hour of the day, you have a better chance of controlling your day. Period. Right? Just like any world-class athlete doesn't just show up. They're pre-game, pre-match, pre-race, whatever you want to call it, ritual. Get their mind right, get focused, visualize, and then they go execute to their highest ability. You've got to teach your G2s how to do that. Why? You want them self-managed. You know, the goal here is not to have to be a micromanager. You want them to be self-managed, self-led. You want them to have a level of autonomy so that you can scale your business. If you got to micro everything, you can't scale that. There's only one of you, right? Or you got to start hiring managers or sales managers and all that stuff, right? And it's going to eat into your P&L, and it's going to give you a layer of complexity in your business you may not even want. All right, that's number 3. Number 4. This is one, man. If I could just reach, into whatever screen or whatever you're listening to and say, this one, if you get this right, everything works. Business, so we talk about relationships and referrals. This is pillar number 4. I want you to think about in your game. So if maybe you've been at this game 10 years, 5 years, 30 years, whatever. Let me ask you, if you could have gotten excellent and comfortable in executing an introduction and referral strategy early in your career, how different would your career have been and your bank account? Right? So the sooner that you can teach, mentor, train, coach your G2s to understand how to use not just languaging, that's the scripting is easy. There's a whole in my YouTube channel, you can find it, on my podcast, you can find it. But the mindset, the why of it's necessary, it's core, non-optional, that would make a major difference. Imagine you have 2 or 3 G2s, and every day those G2s are 2 to 3, 4 times a day reminding clients that we're here as a resource. If you know someone we could help, keep us in mind. And that's happening maybe over 1 advisor, 2 advisors, 3 advisors, 4 advisors, 30 advisors. And now all of a sudden, your business is, pumping out 20, 30, 40, 50, 100 introduction conversations a day times 200 days in a year with a 90% plus failure rate. But how many names are you going to source? Think about that. Think about the confidence it brings to your G2s. That's what at the end of the day, we're in a behavior-based business. So, that just has to happen, right? Going forward. All right. So you figure that out, help them build relationships with young COIs. So again, if I have a 28-year-old G2, he's not really going to build, he or she is not really going to build, most likely, there's always outliers, of course, but he or she not going to most likely build a relationship with a 62-year-old CPA. That person has their people. But their staff advisor, who's a peer, who maybe one day will be a partner or they'll go off and start their own firm. Well, that's a relationship worth having. Yes, it's strategic. I'm going to share a story. Um, One of my very, very first clients back in New Jersey, this is like 1993. He was starting to build relationships with young tax accountants. So CPAs, but like, young, like his peer group, right? Just got out of college, things like that. Um, Fast forward, I'm still a personal client of his. Fast forward now, he is head of wealth management at a major tax and accounting firm on the East Coast, a head partner of wealth management. And how do you get that gig? Because guess what? Those relationships became leaders, were put in power, and he came along for that ride. So you just, again, it's strategic, but you just don't know where it's going to lead. So they're early in their careers. They can start developing those peer groups, those mastermind groups of their peers. Yes, it's not going to pay dividends for you or, for you, the advisor, or for your firm for a while. But here's what I know. The sooner you get started on that, the sooner it starts to happening. So no use waiting on that. All right. So some elements on that. Pillar number 5, development, professional growth, personal growth. So here's some things. Each advisor, each G2 needs a written, and we have a template for this. Each G2 needs a written professional and personal development game plan along with a budget. And it's not just about getting more licensing or going for the CFP. That's all fine. I will tell you right now, getting numbers, 7, 66, 63, 65, all that jazz, health and life and CFP is great. Is that a guarantee of being successful? No. It's a guarantee probably of a job, quite frankly, because there's such a need for that in our space, but it doesn't mean you're going to be, you're not going to become the best version of you. You're not going to be the best. You need to go beyond that. Coaching, you need coaching. You need to develop yourself. You need to understand how human beings make decisions, how to influence people, how to persuade. Maybe not so much rudimentary selling skills, although those could be helpful, but super high level influence, persuasion, coaching skills, right? Don't get caught up in like, I need to know more about the markets and I need to understand economics and finances and all that stuff. And I need to be able to talk about the markets. I mean, bottom line is this, that stuff is obsolete today. It won't make you any more money. And if it's not obsolete today, there'll be an AI tool to do it tomorrow. So in essence, like, why are we doing this? Right? Makes no sense. We want to be super, super careful about that. All right. I think that's really important. Now, last thing I want to do inside this conversation is if you're a firm leader, I'm going to give you 6 things to really measure your G2s on. Number 1, how many conversations are they having in a given day? So that could be a phone call, a Zoom meeting, a text exchange, an email. What are we doing? Next, how many introduction conversations are they having in a given day? That needs to be tracked, right? How many review meetings, COI meetings, warm market meetings? What's their meetings look like? Again, not just live, Zoom's fine too, phone calls fine too, right? Um, when do they, when are they going to be able to fly solo? So time to the first client. When do they get their own, like when do they source their first referral that turned into a client, the first warm market person that turned into a client? However, right? You want to know, because again, everybody needs validation, especially when you start something new. You need evidence that you're down the right track. Because you can't mess around with this, right? Super, super critical. And then also, how well are you doing as a leader in terms of, retaining that talent? 12 months, 24 months, 36 months, and I will tell you again, there's always exceptions, but if I'm taking a new advisor right out of college, summer interns or not, I don't care, like day one in the gig, not licensed, no CFP. Typically, based on my experiences with my clients, it's 2 years before they're ready to solo and do a review with a C or D client. 2 years of development. Okay. Nothing wrong with that. You need to build that long-term bench, right? I look at it this way, like sports. Well, that's drafting somebody. Hey, we're going to draft somebody, we're going to develop them, and they're going to help our business. The second way we get talent, and I'm not trying to go sidebar on this, is like almost free agency. Hey, here's somebody that's and this is what's happening a lot in our industry right now. Hey, here's somebody that joined this organization out of college. They've been there, 3 or 5 years, right? They've got their CFP now. Maybe they've got a small book of business, or they brought in like 5, 10, $15 million. They know what they're doing. They know how to build plans and give advice and run reviews. Huh. Well, that company over there, man, they're not developing that person. They're not paying that person that much. That person's ripe for the taking. And I see it over and over again, right? That there's such a competition for young talent that if you're on the retention side of things, it's not just about how much cash can you throw at the chair. It's how you're developing the people, how they feel valued, and all that. And it's still not a guarantee they're going to stay. And remember when I started, if you spend 3 or 4 years training somebody and then they go to a competitor, it's like somebody blew a hole in your boat. I want you to think about that. Like, you don't get any of that reward as an organization if they leave after like year 3, 4, 5. Right? You don't get none of that back. You get at his organization, the first 3 years, I mean, it's an investment in the chair, right? Salary, support, your time, overhead, right? All those things. And if they walk after you just don't, it's not, you don't get a return on that investment. It sucks. So you gotta be super careful about that. Right? And then how well is your advisor? How confident are they? How are they feeling about things? Right? I mean, that to me is critically, critically important. And we missed it. There's an assumption out there, and I'm gonna get you guys out here in a minute. There's an assumption out there, and I see it's a bias. Well, I hired somebody really good, they're really smart, I'm paying them really good, they'll figure it out. Because I figured it out. Yeah, man, but your name's on the door. It's a different time, it's a different animal. It's a different game. So, just wanted to share that with you. Like I said, go get my white paper at coachjoe.guru. You'll see it right there. It's like 15, 16 pages long. It's all cited information, so it's not just me like conjuring up stuff. It's all cited research. This is a big problem, a massive problem in our industry right now. Is we as an industry suck at G2 training, coaching, and development with a 72% failure rate after 5 years. And failure rate means it doesn't mean they just left the industry. It could also mean they went to a competitor. It's your failure rate. Okay. So I want you to keep that in mind. If you have any questions, reach out. And meanwhile, if this podcast you found interesting, please share it, like it, subscribe, and I'll see you all again next week.